My name is Rolf. I am the Director for Public Governance and Territorial Development in the OECD. It's the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development here in Paris, an organization of 34 industrialized countries. What we would like as an organization to achieve is that climate change policies act now. There's no doubt about it that it had to be done. The issue is whether governments all around the world can actually act on it and not just declare. So we are interested in making the way from where we are today to a situation where we reach these targets that have been fixed and they make a lot of sense, no more than 2 degrees of increase. My personal objective is to make sure that we really look at what governance can do in this context of climate change. I think it is very important that we know what we need to do. Many people have thought about it. Many policies have been formulated. My concern is, how do we do it? Because that seems to be particularly complicated. No surprise, but I think there are also very good solutions. We would like to make sure that people work together on it. And I think the question of who participates in both designing these policies, who and how we decide about which ones have to be pursued, and how do we make sure that we actually get there, we can evaluate progress. One of the most important, I think, areas of our work has been to identify cities as places where most can be done and where is actually a lot happening. I'm optimistic because cities is places where policies and people meet very close. People know when the mayor wants to do a policy, citizens will feel the results immediately. And the other way around, if citizens want something that happens, mayors will respond because they are directly related by the people that they talk to. So the conditions are much better, I think. But they're also better because there are so many people who live in cities in the world. And thirdly, great advantage, if you want to change something, you have to think about 2 areas in particular. You need to make sure that you get your transportation right. Transportation, public transportation, very, very important part of both energy consumption, but also potential for savings. How do we make sure that citizens and governments of citizens in cities get together with the private sector and say, this is what we want to do? Very important point. Second point, housing. The better you are isolated, the better you will make savings in energy. And therefore, I think that cities are particularly great places to start and do something very effectively with a lot of people concerned. I think for the OECD, for my directorate, for my responsibility in particular, I will want to make sure that we find the right governance arrangements for implementation. But as I said, it is not just about designing good policies. That's happening. The question is, how do we organize the voice? Voice is critical. Nothing can be done without having a good participation of those that are concerned and that can do something about it. That's the individual, that's you and me, but it's also the private sector because they invest. But there is also, of course, the responsibility of governments at all levels, by the way. The national government and the capital has to think about how we do this. It's the regions and, as you have heard me say this, cities. Critical unit of change. And I would like to make sure that we are advising, but also sharing good experiences of cities that have made progress to ensure that others know about it, so that we come down to understanding better what works. Not just what are good ideas, but what works. That's what the OECD is all about. Opportunities, I think, there are many actually, because as you can see here, it's the largest gathering of people who have an interest. That's a good indicator for the awareness around the world for this type of policy, the urgency, but also that everybody is concerned. Opportunities, I don't think that there is a lack of it. The question is, what are the obstacles? I like your question. What are the obstacles? And one of the obstacles, I think, is that climate change, by its nature, is a very long process. People need to be aware of what they decide today will be taking the effect 15, 20 years from now. And the obstacle that I see is that not everybody is willing to engage in this long-term view. Politicians are elected for 4 or 5 years in democratic societies. But we need to make sure that we have not a perspective of 5 years, but 50 years. People have to realize that when they consume energy today and have pollution, it's their fault, but the consequences will be felt by their children and by their grandchildren. So I think there is a awareness to create about your action today is what happens on the good side or on the bad side, maybe long once you have already left this fantastic planet Earth. But as someone said recently, very important, there can be no plan B because we have only one planet.